Welcome back to Geek Channel 8. I'm Eric.
I'm Johanna.
Oops.
And already you're going to have to do some editing. Okay.
I'm Will.
And I'm Johanna.
I think we have Rosie with us.
Hey, what's going on? Sorry, I sound like hot garbage. I've been fighting a sinus infection, but I wanted to just pop in and say, hey, real quick, I miss you guys. And sorry, I haven't been around much because my life has just been crazy this year. 2024 was definitely a big year of highs and lows, but we're in a brand new house and we bought a house and moved and all kinds of other things happened in our lives. So I'm happy to just be able to pop in and say hi today. I'm about to become an empty nester, like literally today. On top of everything else, my baby is moving out.
Wow.
So,
Wow.
yeah.
Is this a congratulations or are you feeling the emptiness of the nest?
It's a congratulations. She's 20. She's gonna be 21 later this month, and she's ready. And now is her time to move into her apartment. And she knows I'm just like a phone call or text away if she has a question about anything or needs to know how to do something domestically. So it's just crazy though, man. One minute they're born, next minute you're helping them pick out sheets for their apartment, you know?
Okay. Speaking of aging,
This is our 4th anniversary show. We have made it to the 4-year mark.
Woohoo!
One season away from syndication.
Amazing. Yeah. And it's nice that only half of those years have been during a global pandemic.
Yeah.
I just realized that in my recap of 2024, I ignored November. I just like put like a black hole where November was. November sucked. November sucked royally. Just and it still sucks because November sucked.
Well,
But-
I'll try to give you a good November in my recap of the months of 2024 in our history roundup here.
Yeah, just skip the first week. Just skip the first week of November.
All right, I will do that. January 5th of 2024. Off to a great start. Alaska Airlines Flight 1282 experienced an in-flight emergency when a door plug on the Boeing 737 MAX 9 blew out, causing uncontrolled decompression. All passengers survived, but the National Transportation Safety Board reported that 4 bolts that were supposed to secure the door were missing and had never been installed. This was the beginning of a year of Boeing-related tragedies that continued all the way up to December 31st, the very last day of the year when Boeing crash killed 179 people. So not a good year for Boeing from the beginning to the end. Oh, by the way, all of these stories are about Alaska. I should have mentioned that. Last year, we did Alabama, and I said I was going to go in alphabetical order. Alaska is the second alphabetically, and we got the most downloads from Alabama last year. Alaska, not only is it second alphabetically, but it is the place we are least downloaded in, with it being the only state in the US where we do not have anyone that listens to our show.
So you hear that, all of you. Find a friend in Alaska. Send them this episode. It starts off very Alaska heavy. You can tell them that.
So we have literally, last year, were downloaded in all the other 49 states, but we were not downloaded in Alaska. Maybe Alaska has Canadian internet, and so it just... February 22nd, Brian Stephen Smith was identified as the main suspect in the murder of Kathleen Henry after Anchorage police found photos and videos linking him to the crime. Since then, he's also been connected with another murder, and the authorities now consider him a serial killer. As of this time, his past, both in the US and South Africa, where he lived for a while, is part of an ongoing international investigation. He was sentenced to 226 years in prison on the 12th of July of 2024. And if he turns out to be a serial killer, he'll be one of only very few that were caught and convicted in 2024. March 3rd, on the first day of the Iditarod Trail Sled Dog Race, musher Jesse Holmes came across a moose that was aggressive toward his dogs on the trail. And so this is straight out of Conan, he punched the moose in the nose, right? And then continued on his way.
Amazing.
Soon after that, Dallas Seavey and his dogs came upon a moose, probably the same one that was aggressive toward them. So he shot it and he went on his way to finish the race. And he still won despite a 2-hour penalty for not properly gutting the moose he killed during the race, which apparently is a rule.
What?
So, yeah, that's Alaska for you. April 23rd, a Douglas DC-4 crashed into the Tanana River shortly after takeoff from Fairbanks, killing 2 people aboard. July 24th, the North American Aerospace Defense Command intercepted 2 Russian and 2 Chinese bombers flying together near Alaska, marking the first record of Chinese H-6 aircraft entering Alaska's air defense identification zone, and the first time both countries were intercepted operating together. August 26th, 1 person is killed and 3 others are injured in a landslide in Ketchikan. So, mostly bad news. I told you in November I'd have something good. In November, Esther Keim of Anchorage, Alaska, completed her 3rd annual Alaska turkey bomb from a small plane she rebuilt with her father, dropping 32 frozen turkeys to people living beyond roads. We're going to talk a little bit about our favorite stuff from 2024, and I want to kick this off. 2024 to me felt like a redo. It felt like a redo of 2016. In 2016, we had Mad Max Fury Road. In 2024, we had a Furiosa. In like 2016, we had 2 Star Wars films like Force Awakens and Rogue One. And this year we had, I don't know, Skeleton Crew or whatever. We had Deadpool in 2016. We had Deadpool and Wolverine in 2024. We had Ghostbusters in 2016. We had Ghostbusters Frozen Empire in 2024. Beyonce was on the charts. Kendrick Lamar was on the charts in 2016. Shakira was on the charts. Kanye was on the charts. Ariana Grande was on the charts. Billie Eilish made her debut. All of them are pretty much dominating the charts in 2024 again. Of course, with Trump got elected in 2016, Trump got elected in 2024. So I'm going to start this off by narrowing this focus to movies. Frankly, there's a lot of franchises and remakes. You know, I didn't even bother to see the Ghostbusters movie or the Star Wars Skeleton Crew show. I just didn't. I had no interest. But even the best of them, like Deadpool and Wolverine and Dune Part 2, which I completely forgot that I had watched, and I started watching it again, and I'm like, wait, I saw this. And Furiosa, those are the best of them, and they were just good, not great. I did not find Deadpool and Wolverine better than Deadpool, or Dune Part 2 better than Dune Part 1, or better than the Lynch Dune, personally, but that's just me. I found the Lynch Dune to be more fun, or Furiosa to be better than Fury Road. Fury Road was just, it's like they took their time, 3 decades or something, making that film, and then this. So, honestly, when it comes to a nerd perspective, I was not overwhelmed by the offerings last year. I do think slightly better was these dramas that were about like troubled relationships set against a backdrop of a hobby or a sport, like Challengers and Bike Riders. They were beautifully shot and acted. I may be a little bit biased to tennis. Like, my parents met on a tennis court, so I come from a tennis family. So Challengers, a little bit, like, I might give it a little bit more than other people might. I also liked some of the other tennis movies in recent years, like Battle of the Sexes and whatever the Borg one was.
Sorry, can I just pause for a second? When you said Borg, I know you were talking about a tennis player, but what came into my mind was the Borg playing tennis.
I know what my audience is here. I knew you guys would take it there. But anyway,
they would not be good at tennis, just as a side note.
I don't know, like Pong. Like, you know.
Okay, yes. No, they'd be amazing at table tennis, but I don't think that they just don't move fast enough. But they, I could see them moving their arm fast enough, but they're not
Yeah.
going to die for anything.
Zendaya aside, bike riders. Bike riders, like, to me, motorcycles, something I'm very into. Again, beautifully shot. I may be a little bit biased because, like, half that movie takes place on a street where my own scooters were parked in a garage, like, that's in the shot. Like, it's out of frame, but it's like the house across the street from where most of the action happens. The bar that they hang out in, I was in 2 weeks ago. Like, that is my local neighborhood bar in Northside, a place called Junkers. So I may be a little bit more biased towards these films. I like them better than the big franchise films. But even them, I can't say, like, it's like I'm gonna be like revisiting those a ton. So that's kind of my feelings about movies from 2024.
Well, even without talking about the Oscar bait, I mean, the best films of the year always come out between October and December. But even setting those aside, I think you missed a couple of really great, fun movies that came out in 2024. The Fall Guy with Ryan Gosling and Emily Blunt, a pretty original story, even though it, relies heavily on references to other films and, insider baseball.
It's a remake
still
of a TV show that we grew up watching.
Yep.
okay.
It
All
is
right, but
It's another remake.
The Majors.
And
Yeah.
don't-
okay, but is
Yeah.
it better than the TV show, or are you saying that it's worse than?
I'm the unknown stunt man that made Redford such a star. Like, I can still sing that song.
Okay, but even as a remake, still fun, right?
Yes, yes.
In terms of original content, Problemista, Julio Torres's film about being an intern in the art world working for Tilda Swinton, one of the most creative, hilarious, fun movies. And anyone who has ever been an intern anywhere will love this film. It's just endlessly inventive and really gets to the nitty-gritty of, Tilda Swinton berating him for not knowing how to use this database program correctly. Like,
Oh, so
anyone
it's
who's been an
Swimming with
intern-
Sharks. Did you
Is
see
this
Swimming with Sharks?
no, but
Kevin Spacey was the boss, and he would berate him, like, the intern, for, like, bringing him the wrong sugar in his coffee. Like,
yeah, there's some part. I mean, like, but it's mixed with Julio Torres's specific blend of humor. Which, if anyone hasn't seen his HBO special, My Favorite Shapes, that is for nerds. Like, it's great. Anyway, I recommend Problemista. Also, The Hitman, which came out on Netflix, starring, not gonna remember his Glenn Powell. Sorry, I couldn't think of his name because I was like, handsome knockoff of Iceman, but but he's actually great in The Hitman, and the film was really fun.
Now, is that based off of the video game?
Maybe it's more of a romance. It's hard to imagine it being based on the video game. But the other action film that came out that I think everyone should see is Monkey Man, Dev Patel's film that he partially shot on an iPhone because the cameras kept breaking. I mean, it was one of the most troubled productions, but the result is like a really solid, intense action movie that weaves in some elements of like Hindu mythology, but it's at its core just like a John Wick level revenge movie that's, really well produced considering its low budget. It had support from Jordan Peele, but it's Dev Patel's first try as like a leading man action hero, because we're used to seeing him in things like Best Exotic Marigold Hotel, and it's really great to see him as a leading man. So even just among action films, I'd say, Monkey Man gets some points for originality. But best film of the year for me is definitely Anora, Sean Baker's new film. It's a dark comedy, Cinderella story gone wrong type movie, but it's got a lot of really great slapstick fight scenes, a lot of sexual content. Some of our audience members actually walked out of the screening, but if you stick it through the end, it is a really good time and a great commentary about class and gender, but done in a way that is not at all didactic. It's just a people being people movie.
Let me clarify for our audience that your audience is not our audience.
Yes, yeah.
So I don't think you guys would necessarily walk out of this, but some of these I didn't see. Dev Patel's thing I didn't see. Hitman I kind of overlooked because it's such a generic title. There've been like 25 movies named Hitman, and I was like, oh, what I didn't realize was it was directed by Richard Linklater, who was one of my big inspirations when I started filmmaking. So I may have to check that one out. I'm surprised nobody yet has mentioned Nosferatu, but we will get to that.
Yeah. Oh no, I'm saving my comments about Nosferatu because we got to talk about our favorite episodes of this year.
Yes.
I realized that I don't watch movies. I watch more movies with you, or rather for the podcast, than I did for any other reason. When I have time, I'm usually trying to find a series to invest in because I'm like, oh, the movie's either going to be good, and then I'll be like, I want more of that. But it also took me, almost 2 hours, or it's going to be terrible, and I'm just going to stop because I'm literally not going to the theater anyway. So I'm not going to watch through. There's just too much good stuff to watch for me to watch some of the stuff that I used to watch when I was a kid. I'm like, yeah, you guys remember we used to watch The Love Boat.
Oh God.
The Love Boat.
by choice, but there was no choice. So I did have some favorites, and both of these. So my motivations of like, why did I watch these movies? Oh, it was my kid. So I'm going to say, movie wise, we watched They Cloned Tyrone.
I heard that was good. I heard that was really good.
I thought it was a great, just very inventive, different, never seen it before. Loved that. It refers to blaxploitation films, but I have a kid who's 16, never seen a blaxploitation movie, has no history with that, has no idea. When they cheer about representation in movies, they're like talking about trans and queer representation. They're not used to the idea that, no, you don't understand. There hardly any black people things at all. And we were really glad to have blaxploitation movies, and which is a terrible name because a lot of times it was even some of the biggest black stars making these movies, so they had a vehicle for themselves. But anyway, it refers to that. So that's and basically my kid got a lot out of that. I thought was well done, really good. Now, here's on the flip side. My kid loves this franchise of games called Ace Attorney. So I watched the Ace Attorney movie with him.
I didn't know there was a movie. My son plays Ace Attorney.
Oh my.
Wait a minute. Is this about an attorney?
It's like a Super Nintendo, like old school, like 8-bit video game, right? It's this one, right, Will?
Yes,
It's the one
barely,
with
it's barely, honestly, the joke is, it's like, oh yes, it's a game. No, this is like it's slightly more than a visual novel. It's like, there's a minimal amount of choices, but no, he's all into the lore. He's all into the whole thing about it. He can go on for hours about it. So we did. We tracked it down online somewhere and paid money to watch that movie, and that's all. And I'm glad I had that experience with my son. But that was probably the worst movie I watched this year, including some of the very interesting choices that we watched for the podcast. So that's all I have to say about movies this year. It's like, yeah, there was some good stuff out there. I didn't see them, but mostly.
The worst film I saw, and I hate to say this because I love Lady Gaga, was Joker, Folie à Deux. I know I butchered that French, but not a great sequel.
That's what we specialize here at Geek Channel 8 is butchering French. So
That's right.
staying on brand, Rosie.
The French still love us, and we love them. But yeah, that just no. no, no, don't waste your time on that movie. I love Lady Gaga, and what I can't believe is that she turned down a role in Wicked for this movie.
Wow.
As
Oh,
as Madame Mirabel, who would she have been? I'm so curious.
I don't know, but I think she would have been amazing in Wicked. But yeah, she turned it
yeah.
down for that role, and that was not a great role for her or Joaquin Phoenix. Like that movie could have been so much better, and it just wasn't. So I ended up going to the theater for the first time in forever right after Christmas, and I took my niece to go see Wicked. I got to take her out with my daughter and her best friend, and we went and had a girls' day and saw Wicked, and that movie was phenomenal. I'm not a big musical person, but I grew up on like the older musicals, like watching them with my grandma, like The Music Man,
Mhm.
and anything Julie Andrews was in, anything Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers was in. I like musicals in a way, but this just wow, the singing, the visuals, the costuming, the makeup, the everything in this film is just over the top phenomenal. I just can't believe it. I'm obsessed, and I didn't expect to be obsessed, but I'm obsessed. And then my other favorite was Beetlejuice, which we've talked about this already before. That was a great film too, and I loved getting to take a trip back to that time and get to see everybody growing up and see the next chapter in the story. So there it is.
I found something that I was like, oh, I think my kid will like this. If I can get my kid to watch it with me. And when I suggested it, they're like, oh, I've been hearing about that. Probably my favorite thing this year that we've obsessed over is Dungeon Meshi, also known as Delicious in Dungeon. Really loved it. Had a great time with it. We've watched it over and over again. It hits on so many levels for us. It has this really cool, nuanced depiction of human beings with all different ways of thinking about the world. And also it's essentially Dungeons and Dragons with food and questions about eating monsters. It I can't really describe it enough to make it, I think you should see it for yourself. If it looks at all interesting to you, you should watch it. I would have loved it without having that experience with my kid, but it's even better because it was like hit just right. Now, he since then has probably watched the whole thing probably 6 times minimum. He's doing the fan art, he's doing the whole thing. He knows way more about it. He doesn't spoil it for me because he knows there's stuff that I don't want to know. It was great. Now, on the flip side, this is not something I watched with my kid for a change. And it is not because it was bad, but it left me with this horrible feeling in the pit of my stomach that was unresolved and never will be. Every time I think about the show, and it has a Japanese name. I'm not even going to try, but it's called Japanese Tales of the Bizarre. All right, so it's animated, and it ain't right, man. It's wrong. It makes you feel wrong. These wrong feelings in your bones. So I can't really say that's bad. I'm just saying I've had enough, and that would be what I would call as bad. It's interesting. I don't watch a lot of bad things because there's always something else, and I can always stop and then I forget about whatever that other thing is. But those are the things I'd want to say about, in particular, shows this year. There's other things like we watched Chaos. I really loved that, but it didn't have the same completeness, and it didn't have the same like perfection that Dungeon Meshi did.
Tagging on to TV shows that we watch with our kids, I loved Fallout. I haven't had a chance to play the video game, but I feel like I have because my son talks about nothing else. Like anytime we're in a conversation, somehow it leads back to Fallout. I don't know how, but like he got a Fallout advent calendar this year. I mean, just everything is Fallout. But I actually thought the TV show was great, and it was fun to see Walter Goggins in a lead role, since he's usually playing a side character very similar to the lead that he plays in this show. But he was great. The world building was great. Even if you haven't played the game or you don't have someone in your house who's obsessed with it, you can get into it pretty easily. And I think some of the themes around what's going to happen when society collapses feels a little bit more relevant than it maybe did years ago. But now it's like very easy to imagine that we're, this is a possible future for us, but or a possible alternate past for us. The timeline of Fallout is kind of fun because it's set in the future, but it has all this 50s flavoring. So consequently, my son is also obsessed with doo-wop, which is great too. But yeah, so highly recommend Fallout.
For me, again, it felt like a retread or a sort of disappointing year for sci-fi fantasy TV shows. I got invested in the Three Body Problem, but it was like well made but felt unsatisfying. And I just felt like it was not the year for sci-fi and fantasy again on TV. Non-science fiction, I dug The Diplomat, which just finished its second season. 2 thumbs up for The Diplomat, especially if you like West Wing type stuff.
I love this show. It is, I hesitate to recommend it as like good television, but my husband and I loved watching this together. Part of it is because he has a big time crush on Carrie Russell, which I am willing to let him indulge because there is quite a lot of man candy in the show for me. Rufus Sewell is delightful, but one of our favorite things from the show is just this one quote that we use much more often than it should, perhaps. But Rory Kinnear plays the British Prime Minister and is awesome in this role. And sometime early in season 1, this isn't giving anything away, but they're having trouble negotiating with him, and he's being stubborn, and he says, "Oh, it's because I'm a bad man and I do bad things." And it's just such a great, like, it's not amazing writing, but it's so fun.
This one, officer. This one right here. So I may have my own biases for this, just like I mentioned with Challengers and such. That I like my sister-in-law works for the State Department, so I have my own reasons for liking it, but it's a legitimately good show. That said, over this past Christmas, I ran into another friend of ours, and he's like talking about how he doesn't watch shows or doesn't watch movies because like it's too much of a time investment, but then he watches TV series. And I'm like, well, look, to me, like that's like a 14, 15 hour commitment. Whereas if I watch a movie and don't like it, that's a 2-hour commitment, But what I realized is I do watch series. It's just not TV series. It's YouTube series. Like when I want stuff short. And so I went back and looked at what I watched the most of. And I mentioned both of these a ton of times in the past. So it's going to come as no surprise to you guys, but like Elizabeth Zaroff and her husband Kirk do a show, but it's primarily Elizabeth's show called The Charismatic Voice. She's a opera singer who does vocal analyses of rock and metal musicians, but she's also super into scientific research of like the vocal folds and like sticking cameras down people's throats and seeing how like, because apparently no one has researched like singing from the inside,
Oh, wow. That's fascinating.
Kind of a nerd. She does video game music, stuff like that. So she's a musician herself. Speaking of nerds, we've mentioned it before. Martina, it's mainly her show, but also her husband Hansi in Norway. They have a show called Nerd Forge for all their projects. From like making a Fallout kitchen, like I'm gonna turn my kitchen into a retro 50s post-apocalyptic sci-fi kitchen, to like armor to protect their dog because he is a wuss but is supposed to be a Viking dog, so like they made armor for him, to like doing like a Bob Ross tutorial on the side of their van, right? Like stuff like that. Notable projects they did in 2024 was creating a combination PC coffee machine, and then massive leather-bound editions of the works of Brandon Sanderson, which they presented to him at a con. Like,
Wow.
if you haven't seen this stuff, it is
That's
impressive.
super nerdy.
It is super nerdy.
That is really fanboyed out.
Well, fangirled out in her
Yeah.
case, but yeah, if you haven't seen Nerd Forge, you are missing out. It's great stuff. And then when they were on Adam Savage's Tested, it was like geek overload,
We really enjoyed some game shows this year. Is it cake? If you haven't seen Is It Cake, you need to watch Is It Cake. It is so fun. Um, I even saw a reel recently where one of the hosts of Is It Cake like came out on stage, and I guess it was after the season was over and they were doing an interview type of thing, and they had her sit down on that couch, and as soon as she sat down, she's like, "Oh my God, is this cake?" It was amazing. So yeah, so there's that. And then a couple of things that we've watched on YouTube that I thought were a lot of fun was the Professor of Rock. He has a lot of I'm a music trivia nerd. I was raised on music trivia. We would listen to the radio and my dad would be like, "Did you know that so and so played drums with so and so on this out on the second track on the B side of this album in 1971?" You know. And so now I do it too because
I gotta say, as far as Professor Rock goes, I've watched a bunch of them, but I kind of feel like, even though he's my age or younger, I kind of feel like it's boomer dad splaining. Like,
it kind of is. Yeah. But then now my partner Rob, he's a drummer. Okay. And there's this guy, and hopefully I pronounce his name correctly because it's a Spanish name, El Estepario Siberiano. He I just can't. Like, he's so amazing. He will just people will be like, "Hey, play this song," and he'll play the song, but only using one hand and both of his feet. So he's basically doing it Def Leppard style, and I hope that doesn't offend anybody. But that's you know what I'm saying, because the drummer of Def Leppard's missing an arm. This guy has
we
both
know.
of his arms, but he just will only use one hand. You watch this guy play; it's phenomenal.
Okay. All right. So I was like, books. I remember those. All right. So I'm going to be real honest, and this is just shows my own personal biases. Probably my favorite book of the year was the 2024 edition of the Player's Handbook.
Nice.
I was saving that for the games section, but go ahead. And
probably my least favorite book of the year was the 2024 edition of the Dungeons Master's Guide.
Okay.
That's all I have for books.
All right, forget it. We will come back to Johanna for books in a second, but since you brought this up, I had this under games, and I was like, yes, yet again, it feels like a redo, because like we finally get the first update to D&D in a decade, and there was nothing special. It felt like a redo of the 2012 Player's Handbook. So far, 2 of the books have come out, the Dungeon Master's Guide and the Player's Handbook, and I'm unimpressed. I got them because I waited so long on the 2012 handbooks that I was like, I may as well just get the next one, which it kept getting delayed and delayed. And now I'm like, that really wasn't worth the wait. The juice was not worth the squeeze on that one. All right, back to books on Johanna, though.
I really enjoyed North Woods. It's not really a Geek Channel 8 type title, but what's cool about it is it's a book written from the point of view of one place in, I'm going to say, like northern Massachusetts / southern New Hampshire / Vermont. It's like the exact geography. I don't know if it's a real place or not, but it's written from the point of view of this place from, pre-United States up until almost the present day. And there's like a several murders that happen in this location. And also like people fall in love and, people are dealing with all sorts of different kinds of challenges. But one of the main characters is just the land, the mountain lions that are there, the apple trees, and it's beautifully written. Parts of it are very funny. Parts of it are edge of your seat, like you feel that knot in your stomach kind of writing. So it just covers a range that most novels don't. So highly recommend Northwoods if you haven't read it. Also, the audio tape version, pretty great too. So
who's the author on that?
Not going to remember. It's gone.
Okay.
So my son has gotten into Tyler, the Creator, who has been around for a long time, but I don't generally listen to hip hop or rap, so I'm always behind in what's cool. But my son's gotten really into one of Tyler, the Creator's albums called Igor, And I think it's something our audience would be interested in because it draws loosely from the Frankenstein story. It's about a love triangle, but imagine the love triangle is between Igor, Victor Frankenstein, and Victor Frankenstein's fiance. It's an interesting concept for an album, but like the whole thing plays out with this story of Igor, who's in love with his best friend, who is kind of torn between his friend and his girlfriend. And it slowly drives Igor mad, this, sense of like he's never going to have the best friend all to himself. And the album ends where it begins. It's just a cool concept. If you're not into hip hop, this might be something for you just because the story that is woven through it is really compelling. And some of the hooks are really catchy and, earworm for sure. So yeah, recommend Tyler, the Creator, and Igor specifically.
That's cool. That sounds really good. All right. So I'm going to try and make this the last time, but I have to bring up one last time my favorite of this year. Again, something from my kid, Lemon Demon. The song is Touchtone Telephone. It strikes a chord with me. It feels like something that They Might Be Giants would have written. Lemon Demon is a very odd singular creator who he's not even making things now. He doesn't even maintain like a website or whatever. Other people keep his work in circulation. But for example, he also wrote, have you guys ever seen the Harry Potter sketch with the puppets?
Dumbledore.
Yes.
That's him.
Dumbledore.
Really?
He did that. Yeah. I mean,
What?
he's so weird and quirky. He's just, but like, it really is like, it feels like a cross from generations that my child brought me to Lemon Demon, and it felt just so perfect. So this will be the last time, because I'm actually going to make sure that going forward, he has a recommendation for me for every show, because he's really good with things I've never heard of before. Now, I'm going to have a thing I don't like. And it's not because I'm saying it's bad, but I'm tired of hearing about it. So I don't want to hear, and in particular, I even wrote down Kendrick Lamar's Not Like Us, but I don't want to hear anything from Kendrick. I don't want to hear anything from Drake. I'm tired. Don't want to hear anymore. Done. Okay.
Okay, so that leads into mine. Like I said, pop music and hip hop is just not my thing, but I'm also sick of also the pop divas, Shakira, Beyonce, et cetera, et cetera. I don't have any good new artists from 2024. None. Everything I listened to was new albums by people who had been around already. Jack White released a very good album last year, like very silently, like it was free. He gave it away, literally gave away copies in record stores, and like it has no name. People call it the No Name album or whatever. I think it was released. You can listen to the whole thing on YouTube and stuff like that. It's excellent.
I love it. You might know by now that I'm going to call myself a farm cosplayer. I got chickens. I grow stuff. You wouldn't want to count on me for if you needed to eat, but I talked your ear off about the stuff. So someone on one of my things shared this with me, and it's still my favorite internet thing this year. It's called Chicken Attack, and it is a entire little micro show video about a man and his chicken, and the way he can you have to see it for yourself, but you should watch Chicken Attack, and you will thank me for it later. If you don't, then I don't want to talk to you anyway, because you're a bad person.
I know my chicken. You better know your chicken.
And then the thing I don't want to hear about anymore is demure. I don't want to hear about that. No more demureness. You guys can stop with that. That's not what demure means. I'm going to get all old man on you, except I'm not, because I don't want to hear about it anymore. There you go.
Okay. I want to put the brakes on gaslighting, because, by the way, we should do the movie Gaslight at some point and the remake Gaslight, both which are old movies. Gaslight is not just lying, We'll get into that another time.
Right.
Let's jump then into our favorite of our episodes. So I want to separate our favorite movie or show that we did from our favorite episode that we did,
Oh, okay.
which are
that's
different things. For example, for me, my favorite movie that we did for the show was the 1922 Nosferatu.
Yeah, snaps to that.
Yeah, my favorite episode that we did was Jaws. Both excellent movies. It's kind of splitting hairs at that point. Like excellent movies, so excellent episodes, but I kind of liked the episode of Jaws better that we did and the movie Nosferatu a little bit, just a little, little hair there. So I'm going to throw it over to Johanna first because she was with us for the first part of the year, and then Will was with us for the second part of the year. So
Yeah, I guess my first question, since my job and my kid took over for the second half of the year, was the through line for 2024 Teeth? In which case, why didn't we do Teeth, the film? I just
No.
I was noticing, there was like a little blip for Anna Karenina and Boris Godunov somewhere in the middle of there, but otherwise it was pretty teeth heavy in 2024.
It was Sharks. It was Sharks, which we had meant to get to for a long time, but Sharks led us to the Meg, which is basically a dinosaur shark, which led us into dinosaurs. So it was not strictly teeth.
Okay, because what I was sensing is like vampires into sharks was
Oh.
also teeth. So I was wondering if that was
There was vampires into sharks because we did have Dracula at the bottom of the ocean in the Netflix Dracula. So
that's true.
So yeah, when Dracula attacked the diver, that was I think our shark meter went off on that. So yeah, okay. Well, maybe we'll do teeth at some point. Vaginata dentata. So for those who want the technical term, maybe we'll do that at some point. What a weird film. Anyway, okay.
So favorite episode was Vampire in Brooklyn. When we I love when we get a chance to rip into a movie that doesn't make sense and is over the top and too much. I really enjoyed taping that episode, and just like, oh, so juicy. But favorite film, the 1922 Nosferatu is way up there, although I wasn't on this show, but we did play Jurassic Park this year at my theater, and so I'm going to say maybe favorite film from our episodes would be Jurassic Park.
Well, I'll tell you what, I didn't think of a separating those two things, but I'm going to actually say Jaws. I had never gotten to see the full Jaws, and it just was so amazingly good. Really held up, and I'm thinking like, yeah, I kind of want to watch that again. So good. So that does color whether you like the episode or not. I can't really separate. Jaws made that episode the best episode.
So I realize that in describing some of my favorite episodes and saying Jurassic Park, that I overlooked one of my favorite movies of all time, which I forgot was in this season, but Bram Stoker's Dracula, which I feel like I've been trying to tell people to see my entire life, and that we finally got a chance to talk about it over 2 episodes. So I guess I have to say a double of those being my favorites. Not least of which because of my heartthrob, all roads lead to Gary Oldman.
You're determined to set off every sound effect we've got in the book.
Hey, that's what this anniversary episode is for. If we don't, it means, we failed in some way. But all roads. I think there were some lesser Draculas that I don't know if I needed to see. One of them being Dracula 2000. I don't think I needed to see that movie again, and I certainly don't need to see it ever again after this. So I'm going to say that was sort of a low point. The other ones that were like so bad it's good, or, novel. I mean, like Renfield is also not a good film, and neither was Last Voyage of the Demeter, but at least they, felt like they were taking a different angle on the story, and I, you know, I'm glad I saw those. I'm not glad that I had to rewatch Dracula 2000.
Okay, fair enough. I gonna go on record as saying I still like Dracula 2000. I don't know if I'll watch it again, but I've seen it a couple times and it is a guilty pleasure. I like it. I will say my least favorite movie that we watched, which I don't think I had either of you guys with me, was Hail the Judge, especially the jailbreak scene. For least favorite episode for me was The Shallows, especially the flare gun scene. I officially do not want to see people kill the monster or villain with a flare gun ever again after last year. Oh, I feel like that, especially on the water. Like, we're gonna have like an oil slick and light it with a flare gun. Like, yeah, which just don't do that. Favorite cooking or lobby segment, Will?
Oh, well, okay, Eric, you can be a little extra sometimes. Sometimes, yeah. So when you're like, oh, yeah, I went to. Here's what I did for this lobby segment. I actually made the booze. I infused it. I'm like, what? That was over the top. I loved it. I guess that was just a really great episode. But yeah, he made booze.
I made apricot brandy for the Jaws episode because he says Quint says that he will do it for $10,000 or something and a case of apricot brandy, and I'm like, that's it. I'm making apricot brandy.
How did it turn out?
Awesome.
What?
Oh, it was so good. Yeah, I still have some if you want to try it.
Yeah, damn straight.
Yeah. Okay, how about you? Best favorite lobby segment from last year?
Oh, for me, it's got to be I don't drink wine.
I never drink. Why?
As a recurring theme.
There goes another sound effect.
Yes, which this is now my point to bring up. I did see the 2024 Nosferatu where that line is missing.
What?
I know. I was like waiting for it. They don't say the line, and it's the only Dracula adaptation where they don't say the line. So, going off in a new direction. But otherwise, it is they play up the pandemic element, which is something that is specific to the Nosferatu versions of the Dracula story, and that part of it felt like, oh, now I see why they made this film. Like, that part took on new horror, which we, also felt when we were watching the 22 and Herzog versions of Nosferatu. So overall, like the film, the production design is amazing, performance is pretty solid, but yeah, they missed their cue there.
So my favorite lobby segment has to be Vampire in Brooklyn, because diving into the history of Mad Dog, I had no idea that it stood for Mogan David. Like, I thought MD was Mad Dog, and I would never in a million years have guessed that Mad Dog came out of Sacramento wines. So trying Mad Dog 2020, banana red flavor, literally drinking it during the episode, that for me was the best lobby segment because it just took me places I did not expect to go. So I'm going to use that to jump in with our TikTok food trends of 2024, according to Delish.com and BuzzFeed. Top 10. Number 10 was cottage cheese on everything.
Ugh. The only weird cottage cheese thing I endorse, cottage cheese and bacon is excellent, but cottage cheese does not belong anywhere else. There, period, the end.
You can make anything good just by putting bacon on it. Like I said a long time ago, there's like 4 ingredients that if you add them, you can make anything good. Bacon, chocolate, garlic, and cheese. If you use one of those 4 ingredients, it doesn't matter what it is, it's going to be good. Speaking of chocolate, number 9 was Dubai chocolate bars. Basically, these are chocolate bars that are filled with pistachio butter, which is green and looks totally gross inside a chocolate bar, but apparently is awesome. I've never had one. They're outrageously expensive. You have to be able to live in Dubai to afford one. Number 8, cereal milk lattes. Okay, so this is you just go to your brand of whatever brand cereal you use. You have a bowl of cereal and milk. You let the cereal steep in the milk, and then you strain it out and you use the milk for making your latte. Personally, I would never do that. This for me is something I've been doing for years anyway. It's called I'm late for work. I eat the cereal, then pour the milk into my cup of coffee and go, you know?
To me, this sounds like something for people who actually don't like coffee, but don't realize that not drinking coffee is an option available to them. If you don't like the taste of coffee, don't drink coffee. Just drink the milk. But
I don't know. I mean, this is Gen Z we're talking here. So, all right. Number 7, ramen carbonara, which is ramen made on a stove with heavy cream and egg, which, again, why? I don't know. Number 6, scrambled pancakes. All this is pancakes that you scramble like eggs instead of making them flat.
So this is, yeah, when you fuck up a pancake,
Yeah,
then
it's a scrambled
no.
pancake. Yeah. I feel like this is for people who don't know how to flip a pancake. You know?
Yeah, let's just make it easy. It's this new trend.
Number 5, tangkulu, if I'm saying it right, a traditional Chinese street food, which is a juicy fruit interior inside a candied shell, which I guess you boil water and sugar on the stove to make the candy coating on it. Whatever, not something I'm interested in like trying. Number 4, the chickle. The chickle is just a cheese wrapped pickle.
Yeah, wasn't there like a whole, like glitter pickles? Like there was all sorts of pickle related fun in
Yeah,
2024.
the other was the chamoy pickle, which was number 2 on the list. Dill pickle soaked in a combo of chamoy, sweet and sour candy powder, and tajin. It's then wrapped in a
Oh,
fruit
yeah.
roll up and stuffed with Takis. I don't know. Uh, Number 3 was the Sleepy Girl mocktail, which is tart, cherry juice, seltzer, and a scoop of magnesium. It's like a sleep aid. I just, you know, I just use Jägermeister for that. And then number 1, I guess they had to top Millennials avocado toast with tomato ice toast. This is basically just shaved tomato ice on toast. Why do you want to put something cold and wet on your toast? Like, I guess jelly is technically cold and wet, but, I don't know. Putting ice on there, it seems like it would immediately melt and make your toast soggy.
Are these out of season tomatoes? Like, or in season tomato? Like, is that
I
what?
don't know. I think they freeze the tomato juice and then shave like I'm guessing they get I don't know.
I mean,
Listeners,
tomato jelly is delicious. There are things you can do with tomatoes other than, bake a pizza out of them. But yeah, this to me sounds like you're ruining the tomato and the toast. Why?
yeah, why? Let's get to our stats. I put it off till the end. Top countries and US states for our 2024 listeners. I already told you, Alaska's not going to make this list. So let's start with outside the US. And in the past, I've kind of left off English speaking countries, but I'm not doing that this time. So aside from the US, our top 5 are number 5, Australia, number 4, Brazil, number 3, the United Kingdom, number 2, Canada. Anyone care to guess what our number 1 country outside the USA was in 2024 for listeners?
Australia?
No, that was number 5.
Oh, I missed that.
Still France?
No, France has fallen to number 6 on the list.
Oh,
They're not even in the top 5.
France. My heart breaks.
I
C'est
know.
dommage.
Yeah, we'll have to do another French film at some point here. All right, the answer is Singapore.
Whoa.
Wow.
Singapore was our number one country. They beat out Canada and the UK. So
Are there sharks in Singapore? Is that part of it? Like,
I think
this topic is of deep interest to them.
the area around Singapore is known for sharks. Yes.
Yeah, all right. I get it. Thank you, Singapore.
All right, the top 5 U.S. states. I have not pulled out any. In the past, I pulled out the states that we lived in, but I did not do that this time. Number 5, Pennsylvania. Number 4, Ohio. Number 3, Delaware. Number 2, Virginia. Anyone care to guess what state was our number 1?
Louisiana?
Alabama.
So we got Louisiana and Alabama as our 2 guesses. No, both are incorrect. Heart goes out to them right now. California is our number 1 place for downloads within the US. Not surprising. California has a very large population. So there we go. The most popular episode in 2024.
Nosferatu 22?
Okay, it was not that. Will, have a guess?
I was going to say, Vampire in Brooklyn. I mean, obviously.
Nope, it's neither of those. It was Jaws. Jaws was the runaway favorite by a lot. It was not even close. It is now our 3rd most downloaded episode ever, still just behind Masters of the Universe and Skyfall.
Huh.
So it is rocketed to the top 3 in a very short period of time.
Why? Those 3 things have nothing in common, do they?
I think all 3 of them have they all have very big, like, cult fan bases. Like, I think that's what it is. So, the James Bond fans, the Jaws fans, and the Masters of the Universe fans, I think, like, something about that, just works. It has been it was a good year for our show. We continue to gain followers around the world. I'm very happy about that. And, we had our best season ever, and I'm looking forward to 2024. Until next time, this is Eric.
And this is Will.
This is Johanna.
Signing off.
Teaching your kid to drive is so nerve-wracking, and I went through it twice, and I never want to go through it again. And I don't know how your state does it, but God, it was so expensive here in Ohio. I mean, easily $500 just to get your kid educated and licensed.
No, you know what? How we taught our kid to drive? Our kid was Will, and Will did not know how to drive. And Solomon, our friend Solomon. So myself and my friend Bear abandoned him in a parking lot with the keys to the car. And we're like, okay,
You're on your own.
you're on your own. Do you remember that, Will?
Oh yeah, because
They got out the manual. They got out the manual, the car manual, and we're reading it.
The car manual. It's like this is like a D&D game. Let's
The
figure it
owner's
out.
manual.